Welcome to the National Black Leadership and Empowerment Project series, Ask an Elder.
So hello, everyone. My name is Jakira Williams, and I'm a senior attending Dickinson College, majoring in philosophy with a minor in dance. I'm excited to be here interviewing our guest, Ms. Barbara Mosley Davis, on her voting experience, as well as her feelings about this year's presidential election. But before we get into all things voting, let me introduce you to this brilliant mind. Ms. Davis received her bachelor's in mathematics at Morgan State University. And from there, she received her master's in computer science at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. She then moved on to receive her certificate of completion at the Community Development Credit Union Institute, located in Southern New Hampshire University. Ms. Davis is a retired manager of strategic planning, computer analysis, and financial planning with extensive experience in system analysis and design. She is dedicated and thorough professional with excellent skills in research, analysis, and evaluation, which has led to her successful life as a senior systems analysis and project manager for numerous businesses and foundations. It's a privilege for me to interview such an inspiring and brilliant individual. I want to give a warm welcome to Ms. Barbara Davis Mosley.
Hello. How are you? Thank you for that introduction.
Of course. So I just wanted to start off just hearing about your first voting experience. If you remember anything vividly, if it was a good experience off that, did the election go in your favor? Did the person who did win, did they live up to their campaign promises? Just things like that.
Okay. Well, my first voting experience was a little bit after I graduated from Morgan in 1960. And that was the election of President Kennedy, and I believe he was running against Richard Nixon. And I had been in the South most of my life, and I grew up in the era of things were not always not equal. And one of the things, as far as voting was concerned, you had to prove that you could read. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to register, I was in New York at the time, and I went to register to vote. And I'm saying, okay, what should I take with me? And so since I had just graduated, I took my diploma. And I remember this white lady was quite astonished. So I didn't have to read anything. I guess she figured since I had graduated from college, I was able to read. Mm-hmm. And so that was my experience. And in New York at that time, I think the Rockefellers were prominent in the political arena. And my father, who was very instrumental in the NAACP in New York, I think he was a Rockefeller person, and I tended to follow what my father did. Mm-hmm. And so in the early days, some of the Rockefellers were Democrats, some of them were Republicans, but I was definitely a Rockefeller fan.
Okay, that's really cool. So how was your life growing up with your dad being a part of the NCAAP? How was that?
Well, the thing that I remember about it is, I was still in high school, and the NAACP, of course, have their conventions every year. And so I was the only child left at home at that time. And so when he wanted to go off to conventions, he would take me along with him. And so in some of the places that I remember when we had to go, I think we're going to St. Louis. And at that time, Black folks could not necessarily go to any hotel. And so what you would do is find Black families along the way that had rooms that you could stop at. And I remember my first time in Cincinnati, Ohio, we were going towards St. Louis, and we stopped in Cincinnati and stayed at somebody's house. I don't have a clue, and I don't remember who it was. Mm-hmm. But those were the times that we lived in, and that was my experience going with him to these NAACP conventions and meetings and things of that sort. Because my mother died when I was very young. I was only 6 years old when she died. And so I lived for a long period of time in Lancaster County, Virginia, where schools were definitely segregated. It was before the Brown versus, I forget the name, where the separate but equal, was put aside. It was denied. And so, but that's the environment that I grew up in early on.
That's interesting, especially seeing how I'm Generation Z, so all of my schools have been integrated, and I went to a predominantly white high school and a predominantly white institution, Dickinson College.
Mhm.
And it's just interesting to hear stories about when times were segregated, and you had to go to different classes or different bathrooms, and it's just heartbreaking to hear that we were so divided as people.
Well, it was more than different classroom and different, play. We had a different building. Their school was down the road a piece from our school. We didn't ride the buses together. We had to ride the bus for Black folks, and they rode the bus for white folks. What we got a lot of times were things that they had already used. So it definitely wasn't, the building may have looked equal, but what went on inside was not definitely equal. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed because all of us Black kids were in it together. But the one good thing about being segregated, you do have an opportunity, which white folks often don't allow you to have a leadership role, because someone has to be the president of whatever club. Someone has to be the president of something. And when I finally went to New York, the white folks had everything and we had nothing. And so we were there, we were integrated, we went to the school, but you very rarely had a leadership role, very rarely had a leadership role.
And I can imagine that's why you chose to go to a historically Black college.
Exactly.
For your undergrad years.
Exactly. So I think I applied to A&T and I applied to Morgan. I may have applied to several others, but they were all HBCUs because I said I'm not going to go.
You're done.
I was done at that age. I was done.
I'm not mad at you because I would be done as well. That has to be tiring, especially receiving like discrimination and then use textbooks, if any textbooks. So I can only imagine how discouraging that was.
Exactly. It was.
Yeah. So given our current political climate and everything that's going on with the election, how do you feel about seeing Kamala Harris on the ballot?
I am just over the moon, just like just about everybody else. I think she has the background, she has the attitude, she has all that it takes in order to do the job well. And I'm just hoping that November the 4th we can glow in that victory. But unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to be able to glow in that victory, because even if it's a landslide for Joe Biden, I don't think Trump is going to go quietly. I don't see that he is going to concede along the way. I know that they already setting the stage to have lawsuits. And you can hear it in his speeches. He's always talking about something is rigged, this is rigged, that is rigged. They have already set the stage to take it to the courts. And if the lower courts don't support him, he's going to take it to the next level. And unfortunately, if he takes it to the Supreme Court, you know what they have just done. And if it goes to the Supreme Court and it goes his way, I think this country will be in turmoil. Because if it goes to the Supreme Court and they deny what the populists have said, I think there will be a lot of unhappy people. And I just hope we don't get that way. But we know the nature of the man. He calls people by ugly names. He doesn't speak to the issues. Just how I look should not be an issue for him. If we are debating a point, it's our differences in point. It's not how I look. And that's what I think he has done to all of anybody who opposes him. He calls them names. That's the nature of the man. And that's not good for us as Americans.
And that's not how a leader should act.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
he has set that tone, and that gives his base the opportunity to say, oh, well, if he does it, I can do it too. And some of that ugliness that you see today I believe is attributed to his leadership or lack of leadership. But that's how he leads. He leads by making ugly comments about people and not speaking to the issues.
Definitely. And his horrible comments and his anger is what perpetuates all this discrimination that we see today.
Yes, yes. I was on another Zoom call a little bit earlier, And it was a young gentleman on there, and he is of African descent, and he does some work here in Maryland. And he was telling us how now the government is grabbing up people who are of African descent and putting them on planes and sending them back to Africa, and it's being done quietly because they have hired private companies in order to do this. And I, in doing the call, when it's my turn to speak, and I said to him, first name is John, I said, John, I have to apologize to you for how the United States is doing the people from Africa. I said, this country was not built on pulling people away and pulling people apart. They ask for your tired, you're weak, and bring them here. And what this administration is doing, not just to the Africans, not doing to people in South America who wants to come here. Now, I know that there are rules about immigrating to a country, but if you're not breaking the rules, why pick them up and send them back? And he said some of the people are refugees, and so when they send them back, they're in a dangerous situation. But this, to me, that's not what America is all about. That's not how we were built
at all. Especially seeing, like you mentioned, the people that are immigrating here are refugees who are trying to make a better life for themselves here in this land of the free, home of the brave. Right. And for our leader and leader in chief to sit here and just disregard their existence, want to send them back, is just so disheartening, because it's like they're coming here because they've heard so many great things about this country, and they heard that they can make a new life for themselves here, for them and for their families and future generations. And for you to just disregard their hard work and getting here legally, it's just disheartening.
It really is disheartening. And some of the quiet things that they're not talking about now, some of the children that were separated from their immigrant parents are still here and have children in cages. It just breaks your heart. Where is the humanism in this man and in his policies? Where is it? I am hoping and praying that on November the 4th and days after, that he will be gone. But the sad part about it, he has already made an impact on the United States that will follow him. Even if he has another 4 years, it will follow way beyond his term, because he has put in place so many judges that are conservative and are undoing some of the laws that have protected people. And some of these are lifetime appointments. So his impact is going to be felt for years. And that's a sad situation to be in.
Definitely. So I feel like we both know how things will turn out if Trump continues to stay in office.
What impacted me about several months ago when I saw the film, the video of the policeman's neck, foot on that man's neck. Trump will have his neck on all those folks that he don't want for 4 more years. I mean, that was a sad situation. It almost took me under. I was in tears just seeing how casual this policeman could be, put his knee on this man's neck for over 8 minutes. And it was just casual about it. It's like, oh, this is another day at work. So this is what we're going to be up against if Trump remains in office. I just hope and pray that it doesn't. But I would love to see Kamala Harris standing behind Joe Biden when he gives his State of the Union speech for the first time. I would just love it, love it, love it.
That, I feel like that moment will ring for years to come.
Oh, yes. That's the way I felt when President Obama was inaugurated. I mean, I was just over the moon, over the moon, over the moon. Because I never thought I would see it in my lifetime. Never thought I would see it in my lifetime.
It was amazing. I was 8 when he first was elected, and the way that my mother responded and my parents just in general responded to an African-American man being elected as president of the United States was just amazing. And having that at such a young age just told me anything's possible.
Absolutely.
No.
And that's what you want to look forward to as a young person, even as an older person. You want to be able to say, I can do this. But what Trump has done,
Yes.
what is going to be left for me? He has signed an executive order, and I don't know all the details about not talking about racial equity, all of these conversations that have been coming up. Mm-hmm. Executive order to stop people from talking about it and dealing with the issue. That is a measure of that man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He wants to shut down any kind of conversation that has to do with making a level playing field for all of us.
I believe.
And that's what it's all about.
Hopefully he won't be elected again.
Yes, it is.
Fingers crossed, we're hoping. But so say Joe Biden wins as well as Kamala Harris. How do you think the world would change? Like, how would the world be affected, or in general, the United States of America?
I think we as a people will be overjoyed. Of course, there will be, the opposition base will be unhappy. But the mere fact that he picked a woman and he picked a Black woman to be his running mate is a measure of the man. Mm-hmm. He says to me that women are important, Black people are important. And so, I mean, he could have picked anybody. Strategically, if he wanted to take the gender and race out of it, he could have picked a white man. And so it'd be 2 white men against 2 white men. And so people who would have a problem with a woman or have a problem with a Black wouldn't have that issue. Mm-hmm. But he didn't take that strategic route. He took a route that he felt to show the American people the measure of who he is. Mm-hmm. And I think that will be how he will govern this country. Mm-hmm. I think that's how he would govern this country. Now, unfortunately, depending on how the Senate goes, he would have that battle, because what they will try to do will try to undermine or not support any of his policies and programs that he's going to put forth. And the sad part about it, as young people, you are seeing this ugliness. But I think the Congress was put in place in order to work for us, not work against each other, because my idea is not your idea, or your idea is not my idea. And unfortunately, this is what y'all are seeing. And I'm hoping that you're not taking it in. So if you are ever a congresswoman, or if you are ever a senator, you are there to put policies in place for the people of the United States, not just your opinion.
Exactly. And that's crucial.
It is crucial. It is crucial.
And as you mentioned, Biden didn't take the safe route by having a VP that's of Caucasian descent or a man. Mm-hmm. He chose a Black woman, and a Black woman who has the criteria and credentials to lead in this role. Yes. And I feel like that was an amazing choice.
It was. He did not take the strategic route.
At all. Mm-hmm. At all. So how do you feel, how do you feel about peoples who have kind of I don't want to say a bad view or a little controversial view involving Kamala Harris?
I don't look at the news at all. I read the news briefs online from the New York Times, and so because I don't want to take all of that negativity in. So I have not personally seen or heard. I've heard people talk about it. But I think as a woman, she's well trained, she's educated. I can think she can hold her own. Now, I thought she could have been a little bit more aggressive in that debate, but I said, okay, she's walking a fine line here. Yes. So she don't want to be too aggressive, but she wanted to show her power, because she said something like, I'm the only one on this stage can do thus and so. I'm the only one in the stage can do thus and so. I said, you go, girl. You tell them. Mm-hmm. You tell them who you are and what you can do and what you're all about.
Yes, and that's a great point, because especially her being the first Black woman to be on the VP, on the ticket in general, she has so much pressure. Mm-hmm. And you don't want the narrative of if she were to be in that debate and she was to get a little more aggressive, then it would have been, oh, she's an angry Black woman, that narrative.
There you go.
So the way she was so poised and the way she handled herself when Pence would interrupt her, she's like, excuse me, I'm talking. Just the pleasantries, the poise, it was just admirable. It was like, wow, like she was handling her own on that stage.
Right. And she even threw out, about the HBCUs, I'm saying, okay, girl, you're acknowledging your history. You're acknowledging your history. And my hat is off to her. And I'm hoping she can show America who she is and how she will be a good leader for the United States.
Yes, I hope so as well, especially seeing such troubling times we're in right now with COVID, with the economy. Hopefully that Biden and her can be a power team, a power dynamic.
Absolutely.
And get this country back on track.
Right, exactly. We need to. But also I want to say, because this is a presidential year, everybody's looking at the top of the ticket. But we as people have got to vote down the ticket, no matter whether it's the presidential election or off-year election where you're voting for the governors or your senators or you always were voting for your Congress, but you got to vote down the ticket. You got to understand what their positions are as well, because a lot of the local judges are voted in locally. So you need to know those judges who are being voted in, what they stand for. So it's not just the top of the ticket. You vote down the ticket. Don't just vote the top and leave. Vote down the ticket. Know what the issues are. And here in the county, I'm in Prince George's County, we have two major questions on the ticket. So you need to know what those tickets are and how it possibly could impact you so you can make an informed vote. You need to understand the judges, what their positions are and some of the things that impact you, because they said politics is local. That's what they mean. Politics is local, because these are the people you're voting for that's in your area that's impacting your life. And so it's not just about the top of the ticket. Please vote down the ticket as well.
That's great advice. And speaking of advice, what advice would you give first-time voters?
Go, show up. If you are registered, show up. Don't stay at home and say, my vote don't count. Every vote counts. Now, if you remember back, I don't remember what year it was when they had to look at the vote in Florida, I believe it was, and the hanging chads, they wouldn't have to do that if it had been so far one way or the other. But, every vote counts. And just, people have suffered and died and been beaten for the right to vote. So it says to me, our ancestors who did all of that work, like the John Lewis of the world, all I can say is, please just step out and vote. Even if you don't understand it all, if you just want to vote the top of the ticket, but make sure you make your voice heard.
Definitely. I can't agree more. I know when the 2016, when the last election, 2016, I wasn't old enough to vote, but I was telling all my senior friends, I'm like, well, you have to go vote because you can and you have a voice. And they're like, I don't know, and then the people who were filling in, like, rest in peace, Harambe for president, Kanye West for president. I'm just like, you're wasting a vote.
That's right.
It's just like mind-boggling.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's a waste of time. And anybody who votes for Kanye West, please come on.
Be better.
I don't understand the man, but don't waste your votes on Kanye West.
Definitely don't waste your votes on Kanye West. So, in the same note, what advice would you give young African American women who are living in this time? So say, if hopefully this doesn't happen, if Trump gets reelected again, what advice would you give the POC community, women of color, men of color? What advice would you give us to keep our resilience and our strength during these tough times?
When we always look to the church and to the Lord to help us. And it will be no difference in good times and in bad times. I think that's the way to go. But you got to find your niche in your community to make a difference. whether it's a school board, whether it's a volunteer at some organization that works with battered women to help them. You've got to find some use for your energy. And but each of us have a purpose, and we need to know what our purpose is. And even if you don't know what your purpose is, go find something to do, because we can't sit at home. We can't sit at home and moan and groan, because there is still work to be done. There are shelters out there that women go to who are being abused by their spouse. There are other places that do work, that we can put our energies into that and do what we need to do in order to make sure that people who have registered to vote the next time, because the next election is going to be most likely a gubernatorial election. So you got to make an impact somewhere, and so decide where you're going to make that impact. Even though if the top of this ticket continues to win, we've got to find a place to turn our energy into good and not into evil. Now, I have heard that there might be disruptions in this country. We don't want that to happen, but I know we will be unhappy, but we've got to use our energies in a positive way. Got to figure it out. Got to figure it out.
And for this election, how are you going to vote? Are you going to do in-person voting? Are you doing mail-in?
I've already voted.
Yeah.
In the past, I have been election judge. I have been an election judge for about 20 years. But this time I decided, no, I am not going to put myself out there, because I'm in that category of, people over a certain age, and I have high blood pressure. And so I was looking forward to this election working. But after COVID hit and they called me and asked me, was I going to work? And I had to decline. So what I did, I wrote in for a mail-in ballot, and I got my ballot in the mail, and I sat down, filled it out, didn't want to lay it on the counter for too long for it to get caught under some papers and not get sent. So I did do that and put it in the mail. Now I didn't go and put it in a drop box. I said, okay, I'm gonna be faithful and think that the post office will be faithful in their duty, and see will my mail get there. Sure enough, the election office sent me an email and said my ballot was in. I said, okay, the post office have done their duty, because this president has tried to strip the post office of all of their equipment and cutting back on budgets, want to do things to just disrupt that process even. And he's already talking about, the post office is this and the post office is that. He is setting the tone even in that, and how to impact the election, trying to make it to his advantage. So I've already voted. I've done my time, sitting down, reviewing what I need to review, and have my ballot in. And I hope other people who have done ask for mail-ins, don't let it lay on the counter. Just get it in.
Exactly.
Because that's a no vote right there if you don't get it back.
Exactly.
Don't get it back.
I know I was watching the last debate, and they were mentioning how I was watching after it was a few of the anchors just discussing what was happening in the debate. And they mentioned that the actual tally for the election probably won't be done until like maybe a week afterwards, because people are still mailing in their ballots. So this year is just crazy in general. This election is just interesting.
Right. And I think different jurisdictions have different times when the mail-in ballot should be in. So that's why I wanted to put mine in very early. So make sure it was there before whatever that deadline is in my district. I think it's the day of or the day after in some of them, as long as it's postmarked by the 3rd. So I didn't want any of that to make my ballot invalid. I followed all the instructions. I signed it the way they wanted me to sign. I put it in the envelope the way they want me to put it, because that's another way of getting your ballot invalidated if you don't follow the instructions. If you don't sign it, they're not going to count it. They're not going to count it. Because when you go personally, you have to sign. And so you need to sign the ballot if you have a mail-in as well.
You dropped so many gems on us today. I'm so appreciative. I want to conclude today's interview basically asking you, what gives you hope, or what advice do you have for the future generation?
Just looking at you and listening to you, that gives me hope. You know, I know you think you stand on strong shoulders, but I think we are in good stead with people like you. I knew Bronte, from when she was working at Delta Sigma Theta headquarters. That's how I knew her, and so she's mentoring people that I know who is going to be strong, and I'm sure there are people all over this country who are mentoring young people to step into the roles that as we leave this earth, that we know that this country is in good stead. So keep doing the good work, keep fighting a good fight.
I'm gonna try. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for allowing me to interview you. This has been a pleasure. You've dropped so many gems on me that I'm going to take with me and to my friends and to my future kids and just family in general. I'm just so appreciative for this moment.
And thank you so much for having me and including me in this process.
Of course, of course.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
This message has been brought to you by the National Black Leadership and Empowerment Project.